You're going to ask me about what happened when we went to Austria.
They thought, it would be fun and go to Vienna. It's very exciting and gay. And the children would come along and, go to school and it would be fine.
We were bystanders, being Americans, and watching. When I was 8 years old, and I went with my sister, who was 5, and mother and father.
Our family took a trip to Austria because my father wanted to do research.
His name is Richard Hartshorne, a professor of political geography, and he was gathering material to write a book, The Nature of Geography.
I was 5 years old, and so I have mostly very impressionistic memories of things. I don't know that I understood why they were happening.
We took a boat that went around the Mediterranean Sea, and we stopped at many ports. And sometimes we got off, and sometimes we had to stay with the stewardess while the parents went off.
It must have been a wonderful trip for them, going through the Mediterranean and making lots of stops at wonderful places to see. But of course, at our age, we didn't care to see them. We were just dragging along. We were always tired. We wanted food. One time, I think we were both left on the boat with the stewardess, and she was kind of snappy. And she finally gave up and left us in the cabin while she went somewhere else on the boat. And we both just cried and cried and cried. And then we got to Vienna, and then there was trouble getting an apartment. Something had been promised, but then it turned out that it wasn't going to be available because somebody else came along who had better connections to the Nazi Party.
And the authorities said, well, there were these 2 lists, and he could, which one did he want to be in? One was the regular list, and the other was the Jewish list. And he didn't like that, being divided like that, so he said, even though he wasn't Jewish, he said, I'll take the Jewish list.
We were sort of borrowing space in another building, which eventually is where we lived, because they were extremely nice.
We ended up in a building owned by a Jewish family, so what they did was take the top floor, which had been their bedroom, and turn it into an apartment where we lived.
The landlady was Frau Adele Josefi. She was a terrific grandmother.
Frau Josefi was round and soft, and she was like a feather bed. She was just wonderful to hug. Marion, being young, she was more like a pillow, and I loved that.
But they were so sweet to us, and I think that they were because we were the only not evil, discouraging, frightening thing in the universe at that point.
The grandmother had been a seamstress making ball gowns for the Viennese balls. She didn't have a job anymore. They stopped all that.
She was no longer allowed to sew for money. She was Jewish. They wanted to deprive Jews of their livelihoods.
Frau Josefi took care of us a lot, thought everything that we did was absolutely wonderful, and she just showered us with love. My mother thought they were much too wonderful and sweet and generous and were spoiling us too much. My mother's name was Lois Wild Hartshorne. She was an artist. So it wasn't until after she died that we put all her pictures together, put hers up, and then we got a wonderful feeling about her as an artist. But she didn't really like to be mother. When we were very young, she asked us, wouldn't we rather call her Lois? And we said, no, we want to have a mother.
I think she was a tense person anyway, but I think if you're nervous and tense and trying to please your mother all the time and on top of that have Nazi Germany, it's very hard.
She was very, very concerned about what was going to happen to them when we finally left Austria, and she was writing her relatives and all the friends she knew to trying to find employment for them in America. And she kept writing and writing and writing. And the problem was that it was Depression time, so nobody really had any money for extra. They put me in a school. I would be in fourth grade in America, but because I didn't know German, they put me in the second grade.
I was in kindergarten. There was a wonderful game they played, and I can't find the words to the tune. The tune I still remember. While the prince is searching for his princess, and he puts the wreath on some little girl in a ring, and she comes and joins him in the center. All the girls, or almost all the girls, got a chance to be the princess at one time or another. And I did too, and I just thought it was a wonderful, wonderful game. I wanted to wear the little garland of flowers.
Everybody had to stand up and Heil Hitler, I think, in the beginning of the day. I had to stand up with them, but I didn't have to raise up my hand and say anything.
The teachers were told to teach us all to raise our hands and say Heil Hitler. I came home and told my parents that, and they were appalled. Their immediate reaction was to pull me out of the school and send me to an art school.
The Jewish children and the Gentile children, we all went to school together. I really didn't know who was who. As it turns out, my little friends that I got to know were Jewish. And as the year progressed, they were removed from school, and I was told they wouldn't be there anymore. I couldn't play with them because they were taken away to camp. And what was camp? Camp was this place where they were kept, the families. They couldn't be in their houses anymore. One after another, they were taken away to camp. The Gestapo did come to the house one time.
Herr Josefi, when the Nazis came and took away some people from our building because they were young and Jewish, they took him away too.
People were sad about that, and I was sad about that.
He showed up a few days later, and I said, where did you go? And he said, I went to jail. And I said, well, how come you're back? Or something like that. And he said, they didn't want me. I was too old. And then he laughed. Made a little joke out of it. But he was too old. So I guess he was lucky.
My father had planned to go to various countries and visit other professors. Because Hitler kept invading, he wasn't able to do that.
My father had read Mein Kampf before, and he already had his opinion of Hitler, and he thought he was very dangerous. He wasn't surprised that Hitler was the way he was. I think he was probably surprised that things proceeded to the extent they did. I mean, everybody had to be.
One of the first days that we were in Vienna, a perfect stranger stopped him on the street and wanted to give him a lot of money, like $1,000, for him to take to America and give to somebody else. And my father said, I can't do that, you don't know me from Adam, and the responsibility would be too terrible. But he went home and he thought about it, and he thought about his Jewish friends that he knew were trying to get money out without the Gestapo realizing that it was happening. And he got this idea. Friends of his would give him money. We would all live on it in Vienna. My uncle Jim in New York would send that same amount of money to whatever address my father told him to send it to. So that when these Jewish friends managed to escape, if they managed to escape, they could pick up their money from the relatives. The only problem was how to let Uncle Jim in on the plan without the Gestapo reading the letters and censoring them or coming after us. So my father's plan was to pretend with my uncle that they owned a baseball team, and that my father would be suggesting buying different players in different countries for a baseball team. How was he going to let Uncle Jim know that this was the plan? So he thought, all right, I'll write the letter, I'll describe it, I'll take it to another country. The nearest country was Hungary. Go to Hungary and mail it from Hungary, and then they can't censor it, can't find out. So he did that, he mailed the letter, and then the borders were closed. And he momentarily couldn't get back. He was very worried. My mother was terribly worried. They did then reopen the borders, and he was able to return, but he decided he was not going to take any more of those chancy trips. He was going to stay with his wife and his 2 little daughters so that we wouldn't be stranded. Uncle Jim got the letter, and they did proceed with that baseball game and sent letter after letter. And Uncle Jim faithfully sent off the money to all these other parts in the world.
Kristallnacht was apparently sort of a planned riot. It was to be carried out by not official members of the government, or police, but just thugs, but encouraged all the time by the government. Bands of thugs wandered around Vienna, breaking shop windows of Jews, burning down the shops. They smashed and burned the temples, almost all the temples, some of which were quite beautiful buildings. The idea was to make them feel extremely unwelcome and just sort of get rid of them. It seems to me that they were looking to get them destroyed. My father went out the day after and looked at the damage, and he found that it was extensive.
And there was this little boy, and he was throwing stones at us, so we ran into the house and we said, tell his mother, make him stop, spank him, do something. And they explained to us that we can't do that because they're Nazis. It's best that you come inside and you can play out there some other time. And this was very kind of shaking to me. It was the first time that I really realized that my parents were not totally powerful, and it was quite unnerving. But there were so many things that to be sad about, and it was a very kind of tense atmosphere. In fact, our mother, who usually did not pay much attention to us, she really wanted to protect us from the world outside. When we went to bed, she would tell us a story. Every night she'd ask us for 3 things, like a witch, a box, an airplane, and with those 3 things she would then weave a story. Every night. And we loved it, and we fell asleep over it, and it was like some lovely warm blanket covering us and protecting us from things.
On Christmas, the parents went out and bought this stuffed dachshund, and you could make him bark, not anymore, but then, and we called him Herzig, which means honey or deer or something like that. Herz means heart.
Frau Josephi, as I said, she had been a costume designer, and she said to us that she had gotten a private concession. She wasn't allowed to do this publicly. She'd gotten a private concession to make princess costumes for 2 little girls who happened to be just the same size as Rita and me. And so would we mind if she measured us so she'd get it right for these little girls, because it's supposed to be a surprise for them. And she made these beautiful little costumes. She even asked advice, gold lace, little pink rosebuds, and some pink satin. I remember the dresses very well. And at Christmas, there they were under the tree for us.
The attention paid to children, the focus on children was really sweet. And they thought we were just wonderful children because we were so submissive and obedient.
Well, my mother said that one of these days, soon, we are going to be leaving Vienna. So I want you to pretend that this is the last day. Make sure you bring everything home that you might want to keep. Say goodbye to anybody you wanted to say goodbye to. And so I did that. And I said goodbye to every stone and every street as I walked along. And then I found out that was, in fact, the last day, and we were going to go right then.
And then somebody said, well, you know, sometimes they've been impounding cars on the basis of the needs of the state or something like that. So he began to get extremely nervous, because without our car we would have been like up the creek. Then he got serious.
I remember packing the car. I remember that Frau Josefi wanted to get in the trunk of the car. This wonderful woman who was all things nourishing and wonderful, she wanted to get in the trunk of the car, and even I could see that she couldn't get in the trunk of the car, that they would find her out. And the last memory I had as we drove away was her with her blue apron up to her eyes. And that's how we left Vienna.
Well, it was horrible, really. I think it was not only that she had to leave our Jewish friends behind and knowing what they were headed for, and nothing could be done about it, and they tried to get them jobs. And I guess we drove across France, and then he was getting nervous, really nervous, because then he wasn't sure that the French wouldn't impound the car. And they were making arrangements, getting reservations on a return ship. We drove in our little car with all our belongings on top of the car as fast as we could go to the port and got on the boat. And the boat sailed away, and we saw the coast of France and the rest of Europe just sink below the horizon line. And my father said he never felt such relief as seeing that disappear. A little child may not understand what's going on, but they get the feeling. This big person who takes care of me is afraid. They are maybe not completely powerful, and maybe we're all in danger.
When we got to the New York Harbor, everybody went on deck to look. The Statue of Liberty was pointed out to me, and everybody fell kneeling. And I looked at these grown people, grown men and women, they were on their knees. Things were not as they had been planned. And we had a very interesting, stressful year there, which is seared in my memory like a tattoo.
And it's a very frightening thing.